on Talking with Springfield Township, we are going to talk to Chief of Police Robert Browder and also Fire Chief Robert Leininger.
Thanks for having us.
There are a lot of things happening in 2020. And I don't think we can even cover absolutely everything that both of your departments have been covering. But I think we'll see how many of them we can kind of take a minute to talk about. And of course, the biggest thing that we're probably sick of talking about, but is the most effect on everyone's department this year, is the COVID response. How did that change how each of your departments operate?
Well, it totally changed everything for us. I mean, we're an out front organization. We have contact with hundreds to thousands of people every day, adults and children alike. So we kind of changed our whole the way we operate completely. A lot of people come to our lobby. We had to close the lobby, so they would have to call from their cars, and our officers would go out and mask up and take reports from them. Going to people's houses, it was the same kind of thing. It's kind of impersonal when you're there to take a report at someone's house and you have to ask them to come outside. So a lot of things like that, we have a lot of contact with the children in the township. So we weren't able to stop and interact with them like we normally would for a period of time until we really understood the virus and how it spread. So fortunately for us, we did well over 100 of the drive-by birthday parties. We did some graduation parties, so that was great for us. We really enjoyed doing that. It's just that everything just totally changed in a heartbeat with the human contact that we were used to having.
Yeah,
sure.
And Dana, it was very similar for us as well. I would say the word is challenging. Because we just can't shut down and say, well, we're just going to do COVID response today. And we're not going to go to cardiac arrests, or we're not going to go to fires. So we had to continue to meet the demand for service in addition to responding to COVID-related emergencies. The challenging part also early, and that started around March 15th, is that we didn't know what COVID was. How did it show itself? People didn't wear a sign around their neck saying, I'm infected with the coronavirus. So we had to treat everybody as though they were infected. And that created some challenges for us. The biggest challenge was PPE, the personal protection equipment that we needed. We had plenty for everyday type of emergency responses, but now with this additional run volume, we needed more. And initially we just didn't have it. So we had to adapt. One of the things that we did, I'm going to give you a couple show and tell items here. One of the things that we did was when we suspected somebody had COVID, and the criteria for that was if they presented themselves with a high fever and had trouble breathing, those were the triggers that we just assumed that they had COVID. So with that, we had to go into full isolation. We would wear a Tyvek suit. We needed self-contained breathing apparatus to protect our respiratory system. Obviously goggles and gloves. But one of the things that we had to do is we used self-contained breathing apparatus. So now, like what Chief Browder said, now we're presenting ourselves differently to the public. Now we're coming in looking like Darth Vader with a mask on, trying to take care of you. And in most cases, we were fairly well received because the people were sick and they were glad to see us. But in other times, it was uncomfortable for people because they didn't know what they were doing. Later, as we learned to manage it a little better, then we went to a different type of mask. This is a half-face respirator with P100 filters, and then we transitioned to this. Early on, too, we were concerned whether or not we would have enough N95 masks. And so we had to come up with some alternatives. We even looked at making our own masks using a diaper. And you're going to laugh at me here, but this works perfect. It really does. I mean, you hook this on. Well, I'm just going to hold it here. But look how it seals, top and bottom. and it's also it's a fashion statement. But it also pushed us to look for innovation to solve problems, because we didn't know if we were going to be able to get N95 masks. The N95 mask that we're talking about is this mask right here. This is the one that all of the medical professionals wear. It protects the escalation as well as the inhalation of the coronavirus. And these are the ones that are still today very hard to come by. So the biggest challenge that we faced was that we just didn't know what we were dealing with. And we had to treat everybody as though they potentially were infected. And so we had to protect our own employees, we had to protect our residents, and we also had to protect the police. This was something that was very difficult for us, because the police respond with us on almost every emergency. And they respond, a lot of times they're there first, and they make contact with a resident, and then we pull up and we work together. We come as a team. We're emergency services, and we come as a team. But now, because of the coronavirus, we then had to say, whoa, you wait outside while we go in and do the assessment to determine whether or not there's an exposure here for infection. So it changed the way that we do things. I mean, without a doubt. It was, and still today it continues to be challenging.
That really highlights that there's not one answer we had to figure out. That when in March, when we started finding out that we needed to do some things differently, and really before that, it feels like, well, we've had time since then to figure things out, but we're learning something different. The materials we're using change, and the fact that you need to keep departments isolated so that if someone is infected here, it doesn't take out both the fire department and the police department. Your shifts have to be isolated. There's a whole lot that had to happen besides collecting gear. And then collecting gear, the entire world, not even just the country, was collecting the same pieces of gear. So it's really interesting to see some of the innovative ways that you worked around that to make sure you could still be safe and still keep responding, which is fantastic. That leads me to ask you about, you've mentioned this, your interaction with the community and how that's changed. Usually you interact with the community. Both departments are frequently in the community doing programs, making sure kids know what firefighters look like when they come in their gear, and that changed. Making sure that kids are comfortable with the police officers when they need help. How did that change? How were you able to keep that interaction going in this time of being distant?
Well, again, the fortunate thing for us, we had a couple requests for the drive-by birthday parties, and that was really bigger than we realized, I think, at the time when we started it. So as far as the kids go, we did a lot of those, and we actually stopped. We provided gifts for a lot of kids, because as adults, I think we all felt the pressures and the changes that we had to adapt to. And imagine, seeing a small child, like what are they thinking, and what can we do just for a minute, to help with that. So we did that, and we've done a lot of just walking around the neighborhoods and staying at a distance and talking to people. It was like the fire chief said, it was really a challenge, and even to this day, things seem to have slowed down a bit as far as the virus goes, but we're still, even though it's been 7 or 8 months now, it's still all new to us. And I think we catch ourselves sometimes walking into a situation where it could be a situation where the virus may be, and you have to really stop and think. We didn't have the PPE equipment that the fire departments had, because we didn't really intend on being, right with, human-to-human contact with somebody that had the virus. But I know for a fact that we did on a number of occasions, just from our normal contacts, out on the streets and out in the communities. For example, there's an auto accident. We don't know. So, we had to do the best that we could to protect ourselves. And fortunately for us, we've been very successful at that. So, but again, it's been quite the challenge, and just an entire change of how we do business.
How about the fire department? How have you been connecting? The birthday parties are so fun.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of things have you been able to do?
Well, we've also been able to join, actually Chief Browder coordinated those drive-by celebrations, and he included us when possible. And so that was a big success. I know the community really appreciated us showing our support for them when typically they show our support or their support for us. But unfortunately, we had to cancel our Kids Fire Academy. We also had to cancel our annual open house, which should be coming up the first week of October, but we had to cancel that event, and we look really forward to that. So unfortunately, the impact of this is that it has had a negative impact on our ability to get out and interact with the community the way that we normally do. But there was something that really that touched my heart, and that was in July when we did the 4th of July parades to a lot of different communities that we go to on 4th of July. The empathy for the police and fire departments was amazing. I mean, we'd drive by and we'd get standing ovations, we'd get claps, and it really touched our heart. We were very humbled by it, and we're proud to serve, but it was humbling, but at the same time, it made us feel good knowing that the community supported what we are doing and the challenges that we're facing every day to keep them safe.
One of the things that you normally get when you're close with the community is you get that feedback on a regular daily basis. So that's part of separation, is also being separated from support that you would get.
Yes.
So it's really great that there was a chance for that to happen. And I know that because things like open houses and touch a truck, things that normally are very hands-on, had to get canceled. I do know that both of your departments have been really open to having us come in and film, and so hopefully a lot of families are watching the virtual Touch a Truck this year on Thursdays on the Facebook page. Those are happening on the Springfield Township Facebook page, but that's another way that I've seen both your departments connect with the community, is when you can't do it in person, then, well, we'll do videos and they'll go on the Facebook page. So I'm hoping a lot of folks will go find those too.
Right, and that's one other thing that we've both had to do. We're both on different boards, both on the county and state level, and we had to see some new technologies that we were not accustomed to in the past, and a lot of the meetings that we've done and a lot of the other contacts that we've had with people have been virtually, and that again was another challenge that we weren't used to, but I think moving forward in the future, some of those things may remain and actually save money with travel and everything else.
We focus on the negative impact, but I think the positive impact is it's taken us out of our comfort zone. It's forced us to sit in front of a computer and have meetings. The Zoom meetings that we go to now and stuff, actually in some ways we're more productive because you don't have to travel to go to those meetings. And it's also created opportunity for us to look at innovation and different ways of doing things, and opportunities to save some money using a different type of supply or something like that. When we ran out of our Tyvek isolation suits, we didn't know when we were going to get another supply. So we went to Home Depot and we bought rain suits. The typical pants and jacket type rain suit that fishermen wear. And we used that as an alternative. We saved money, it worked just fine, and so it forced us to find innovation and alternative ways of doing things, and I think we'll be better in the long run because of it.
There's a lot of really interesting crafting going on in the fire department, I'm finding out here. But I love the innovation and the figuring out and how can we make this go on. Now, as we are talking about, we've come up with new ways to take care of COVID-19 and respond in a pandemic. In April, you got to add something else to respond to on top of that. What happened in April?
We had a tornado come through.
Naturally, right?
Of all things, in the middle of a pandemic and, still adjusting to how do you deal with certain things, we have a tornado comes through of all things.
Yeah, April the 8th, tornado came through. It actually touched down around Adams Road and continued to go southeast and actually lifted around the Caldwell area. So it went completely across Springfield Township, and it did a lot of damage. Fortunately, it was a relatively small tornado, but any tornado is bad. But it did a lot of damage to trees. It took off some roots. We had a large power outage for days till they could reinstate the utilities. But it was just that, again, extra challenge or extra demand for our services that, you know, we walked in the apparatus bay and said, really, now what? You know, one more thing, you know? But a lot of times that's when we're at our best, when we're met with those challenges.
So what was different about the way you responded to a tornado this time than what you would normally do because of the pandemic?
Well, I would say it's the isolation. You know, we were dealing with, we had to wear masks. We had to treat everybody as though they were a coronavirus carrier. So typically we would be very hands-on. We would be offering a lot of emotional support to people and so on, but we had to keep our distance. And that's typically not our style. We like to be very hands-on and we like to be personal with people. So it forced us to kind of keep our distance.
And even internally with, you know, like the chief said, fire and police and even public works, not with us today, but they were instrumental in the cleanup efforts in this tornado. And we had to really be cognizant internally with our three different departments of keeping our distance and you know being safe with PPE and things like that. Whereas normally you go way back to 2008, I believe, with the hurricane or the windstorm that came through. We were 24 hours a day. We were all together, right on top of each other, making plans and, you know, getting things done. That, you know, this time, you know, we had to take a step back and say, okay, we remembered that, and we you know, developed a lot of good training and plans because of that back in 2008, which helped somewhat, except with the pandemic, we had to do all of that completely different.
And that really, we're talking about one really notable event, a tornado, but throughout this pandemic, that's the headline, but there are still medical emergencies and there are still public safety emergencies that are the sort that you normally would be dealing with, except you're still dealing with them. And so are there other ways that you've seen that besides the tornado?
Sure. You know, our call volumes both for police and fire are among up towards the top in the county. We're both very, very extremely busy. As far as our calls go, a lot of them changed. So a lot of people were staying at home, working from home. So our auto accidents went down drastically. But our domestic dispute, family trouble runs, and people that were suffering mental health crisis went very high, way higher than normal. So luckily for us, that some of the normal everyday types of runs that we make did go way down so that we could deal with the increase in some of these other runs. So basically the call volume stayed the same, just totally different types of calls.
Yeah, we experienced the exact same thing. It's really interesting. It's interesting he mentioned the auto accidents. In the month of March and April, we had 11 auto accidents with injuries in each month. We normally average 30, but that reflects the stay-at-home order because people weren't driving. So it shifted, but our run for cardiac arrests, for trouble breathing, fever, and just general sick people went up extremely high. So what one type of run went down, other run volumes went up. So our run volume stayed pretty constant, but it was just the type of runs that changed.
The fact that you were talking about the different kinds of things you're responding to now, domestic violence and mental health difficulties, makes me remember that you have just undergone your accreditation with all of the training. There's different kinds of training that goes with different kind of calls. Can you talk about what it was like to go through that accreditation in the middle of a pandemic?
Sure. It's this was our 8th time getting reaccredited. So we've been accredited since 1999. Essentially what that is there's about 190 different standards that cover everything as far as law enforcement goes, from administration to investigations to training. Training is one of the largest parts of that accreditation. And we're seeing across the country now that you know, there's a push for de-escalation training and dealing with persons with mental illness. We've been doing that for 20 years. That's part of the accreditation process. Typically on the 4th, it's a 4-year cycle. We do 3 of those online where we send in proofs of compliance. And then the 4th year, assessors from different parts of the country, they come in and they do a physical assessment. Well, we were not able to do that this time for the first time ever because of the pandemic. So we did that virtually, which was a challenge. It was a 2-day process for us. And then, you know, after you achieve that accreditation, it goes to the commission who does the vote. Well, typically that's somewhere that we would go. We were due to go to Oklahoma City for this, but we did it in our conference room virtually. So very, very different way of doing it. By no means did it diminish the process. There were no breaks. It was all the same rigorous things that we had to do to become reaccredited. Just a total different look.
You didn't mention where you would compare to other police departments, but this accreditation leaves you in a place that compares really well.
Absolutely. And in Ohio, there's 831 law enforcement agencies. Only 42 of them are accredited. I think we've all seen too the Ohio collaboration that started to mandate standards here and there. Again, these are a very small number of standards that the Ohio Collaborative is requiring of those 190 plus standards that we must comply with. So again, you know, we're ahead of the curve. We've been ahead of the curve for many, many years in that regard. So, you know, we're very pleased about that, and it just goes to show that, you know, we are a very professional and very well-trained law enforcement organization.
I think that's really important for Springfield Township residents to hear, because we're hearing about trainings, and this is not a new idea for you. This is something your department has been doing for a long time, that you achieve very highly with these trainings as a department on a regular basis, and that's exciting for us to know ahead of time.
Actually, if I can comment, I want to say that we're very proud of our police department, and we recognize the hard work that it takes for them to achieve such an accreditation and an award. But there's also the ancillary effect of that, and that is that it establishes a very high standard of performance and excellence. And that carries over to the other departments. Quite honestly, we've been using their model, although we don't have an accreditation process. We use their model to influence the quality of our department, and we achieve for that same level of excellence. In 2018, the Springfield Township Fire Department was recognized as being the Fire Department of the Year, and that we were selected over 1,200 fire departments across the state. And that's because of the quality of fire and EMS that we provide to our residents here in Springfield Township. But also it impacts our Public Works Department. They're going to be going through an accreditation process here very soon. And again, our focus is on quality of service and a certain level of excellence. And one department pushes the bar, the rest of the departments try and follow. So we influence each other when it comes to that high level of performance and quality. And again, I'm very proud because we come as a team. There's a lot of collaboration and partnership that goes with our departments. And a lot of times we're elbow to elbow with the police and firemen, and so their quality impacts our ability to provide quality service as well.
Right, and that's the great thing about Springfield Township is that all of the departments are there. You know, we can sit here and say we have this, that, and the other, and they're great, but you know, we constantly collaborate internally. Where I can tell you, you know, I have colleagues across the country in law enforcement. I often talk to them about, you know, what is your relationship with the other departments in your city or your township or your village, and they say not very good. And I tell some of the stories about you know, how we all work together. If I have a problem that, you know, within the police department, we're like, really need some ideas on how to do it. We bounce ideas off of each other all the time, you know, all three of the departments, and we've come up with some really innovative things, and that, you know, you talk about thinking outside the box. We totally go outside the box on a lot of things, and a lot of these things have been very, very successful for all of us.
I love to see that as one team. You guys are not competing against each other, except maybe in a challenge way to say, all right, you guys, you have accreditation. Well, fine, we're going to be Fire Department of the Year, and over 1,200 departments, and that's the good kind of competition. That's what's really great to see.
Well, and that's pride in your departments.
Yes.
You know, but we have fun with that. Yes,
we do.
And we benefit in Springfield Township, so we love that you keep doing that. Keep doing that, and it only benefits us. Actually, as we look at all of these new services and being creative and finding ways to bring things into the township, there is something new in the fire department's garage. It's the UC Health Mobile Stroke Unit is parked over there, and now another resource that we have in Springfield Township.
That's correct. We started this project in 2019 with a partnership with UC Health. And the objective was to provide a state-of-the-art mobile stroke unit that could respond with our EMS to treat strokes on site. So in other words, this special ambulance would park in front of somebody's residence. We would go in, do a quick assessment, determine it's a stroke, then that patient care would be transferred to the MSU staff, and then they would be placed in the back of this special ambulance where they would receive a CAT scan as well as certain pharmaceuticals, and the one that is very well known is TPA. And the quicker we can get TPA on board, the less deficit the patient may encounter. So it's extremely important. Its time is of the essence. So now with them parked in Springfield Township, when the EMS gets dispatched to a stroke, the MSU gets dispatched simultaneously. We respond together. And so we bring that state-of-the-art resource to our residents in Springfield Township. Now, because it's a pilot program and it's a grant-funded program, it goes beyond Springfield Township. It goes within a 15-minute response time. So look at Springfield Township as being the center to it all in Hamilton County. Go out 15-minute response in any direction, and that's where they'll go. So they can go in multiple jurisdictions. But the fact that it's sitting in my firehouse, that is a huge benefit to the residents of Springfield Township. And what's really exciting about it is it doesn't cost us a cent. It is a $1.3 million resource that we are getting absolutely free. The staff, the supplies, everything comes free to us. We are just sharing our firehouse with the staff of the MSU and allowing them to park in our apparatus space so we can bring this tremendous resource to Springfield Township.
And with stroke response, seconds matter. So if you have to wait until you can get downtown to the University of Cincinnati Hospital, those are valuable seconds that you did not get treatment in. Having that live in Springfield Township and be able to get to you that quickly, and then be able to treat you as soon as it gets to you, instead of having to say, well, we've got the ambulance here now, but now we have to get you somewhere else.
And they have already had some successes. They responded to a patient who was having a stroke. They put him in the back of the MSU unit. So think of a stroke scale as 0 to 20, 20 being the worst. Well, this patient had a 16, so extremely severe stroke. They were able to do a CAT scan, they got TPA on board, and within 2 hours, he went from 16 to 0. And he left that hospital the next day with 0 deficit. That's the success of that program. That's what will drive future innovation with programs like this.
And that goes under, to me, creative solutions. That's not something Springfield Township had to budget for.
No.
That's something that just by saying you may park here, we now have that right in the community. And I love that. I feel like the things that we've talked about all reflect departments working together and finding creative resources and solutions, and really just reflecting support that you're seeing from the residents, which you got to see a little bit on the 4th of July, and you
Yeah.
got to see a little bit
That's
of
right.
that support, which is really nice. Is there anything else you want to make sure the residents get to hear about? It's been a little while since we've been able to chat with you and share what's going on.
I'd just like to express my appreciation to the community for we've had not just the pandemic, but a tough time for law enforcement in this country here lately. The outpouring of support has been amazing from our community. The phone calls, the letters, the cards, the food. We've had so many residents send us food, so much that we had to schedule. We had to schedule the food in. So our residents have been absolutely great with us and for us, and we just totally appreciate all the support that they've shown us over the last 6 or 7 months, even more so in some challenging times.
That's really nice to hear, because I think sometimes residents wonder, well, if I mean, is that really something that they appreciate? And it's really nice to know that it makes a difference.
Well, and I echo that. The police are, they're such a valuable asset to our community. And when I hear things like defund the police and any negative comments about our police, it hurts, because we're part of the same team. And that negative comment also hurts me, because I'm very proud of the service that they provide. And a lot of them are personal friends and colleagues, and we work extremely hard to exceed the expectations of our residents. And I would say, the majority of our residents are very, very positive, and we've received nothing but positive feedback. We also receive cards daily showing their support. We try and stay away from the cookies. I noticed you're sucked in your stomach there, Chief. But anyway, we try and stay away from the goodies the best we can. But no, it's that type of gratitude and appreciation that we really appreciate. We're human. We try and do the best we can. But the negative things around us, they impact us. But we're professionals. We try and push on and work beyond that. But a pat on the back or a thanks goes a long way.
I think the achievement with accreditation and the levels of training that you've shown for years and years really highlights that professionalism, and gives the residents something to be proud of, which makes us happy to support. And just the fact that, like you said, you're responding to different kinds of calls this year, and the fact that we know, but you've had to have training in those things. But also, the majority of police departments in Ohio have not necessarily. We are really lucky to have the police department and the fire department that we do, with those levels of achievement, those levels of achievement come from those levels of training.
Right, and that's we've our training is highly regarded. I know, coming from me, that's just saying that we're highly regarded, but we do assist a lot of other agencies, both here in Ohio and in the county, and even across the country. We've developed a number of programs. For instance, our field training officer program. When a new officer comes on, they go into field training for a good period of time. And that actually has been adopted by the state of Ohio that governs police officer training. That's the program they adopted for that. And there's just because of the accreditation, though, we don't stop there. We do look at things that go on locally and across the country, and we look at those situations and really put some really deep thought into it, some analysis into it, and say, hey, is there something that, if that happened here, we could handle that different? So, and I know that goes for fire too,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone in the township. We look at situations and try to imagine how we would handle that here.
I'm really glad you said that, because I think sometimes we think that training is a checklist and not necessarily responsive to things that are different and things that are changing. So it's really neat to hear that really what you're doing is constantly looking at what current needs are and what you need to know. And that's different every day, I feel like.
Right, and I can say, you know, back when the economy crisis we had some years back, you know, a lot of departments, and I don't know if that's, I would imagine the same for fire, the first thing that went was the training budget. And you know, we hear this talk of defunding the police. The first things that are going to go are those training budgets. So even back then, you know, we had to find innovative ways. How are we going to get the same high level of training? And so instead of sending a lot of our officers to training, we would send 1 or 2 officers and get them certified as instructors, then come back and train all of our officers in a certain discipline, and that, you know, saved tons of money. And we still do that to this day, even though our training budgets are somewhat back to the way they used to be. So
there's a lot of creativity on how you make sure both your departments get to have all of the supplies you need, but also all the training you need with the most efficient way, which is really great to see also as a Springfield Township
One of the
resident.
things that we've done is we've tried to change our culture so that when the COVID first hit, rather than to look at the negative impact on our department, is we looked at it as an opportunity to learn. We are now on version 18 of our COVID response SOG. And before March, I didn't know what fluid meant. Now I do. It means that SOG is constantly being revised, and it's a work in progress. But we've learned a lot with any tragedy, whether it be a fire or a tornado or whatever. You learn from those events, and so it makes you better the next time something happens. We will be better prepared for the next coronavirus, whatever that may be. But we've learned that we need to stockpile our PPE. We need to have vendors that can provide supplies on short notice. We've learned from working with collaboration with our emergency management agency. We were sharing PPE. When I'd get PPE, I'd come back and share it with Chief Browder. In the same way around. I mean, we share resources. And that's the key, is that we learn. We don't sit around and feel sorry for ourselves that, oh my gosh, this is such a burden, we're dealing with COVID. No, it's not. It's an opportunity for us to learn and get better at our profession. And there's a term that we use, continuity of government. No matter what is thrown at us, we don't have the option like most companies to shut down. We never retool, we never close, we don't make excuses. So whatever challenge is thrown at us, we are professionals and we have to ramp up and figure out a way to deal with it. And I'm very proud of the way that our departments have worked together to meet that challenge. And we'll face whatever happens in the future together and professionally, and we'll succeed, and we'll provide a high level of service to our residents.
I don't think there's anything better way to end the conversation than with that. I feel like that says a lot about both of your departments. I really appreciate the time that both of you have taken to talk to me today so that we can share this with the residents of Springfield Township. I am hearing that the food donations are highly appreciated, so I suppose we'll let folks know about that. I think the fire department wants some of those too, so we'll just put that out there. And really, though, thank you so much for all of the work you do, but also for being willing to take time to make sure that we can be connected to that and hear what's going on and see these things in our township that are really great to know that this is part of our community right here.
Well, thank you for having us.
It was a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks for watching Talking with Springfield Township.